Imagine stepping outside and feeling summer air that bites like winter, fields that refuse to ripen, birds fallen silent, an omen in the hush. This is not legend. In 536, the Northern Hemisphere entered what medieval chroniclers described as a year without true daylight. From that twilight came a chain of events that pushed empires to the brink and set the stage for a plague that would haunt cities from Constantinople to Rome. Picture it. A gray disk, pallid and cold, dust glittering like ash from a dying hearth, stalls opening late because dawn arrives thin, bakers lighting extra lamps, soldiers scanning the horizon for a sign, priests whispering that time has lost its beat, a chronicler noting that the sun gave no proper light for nearly a whole year. He does not know why. He only knows something immense has happened above, and below, the earth has begun to shiver. Here is the thread for our journey. Nature and invisible life can humble emperors and redraw maps, yet people persist. They improvise, they grieve, they learn. Today we'll trace the path from the darkening of 536 to the first wave of the Justinianic plague in 541, to see not only rupture, but seeds of renewal. Stay with me. In minutes you'll hear how a single summer of shadow became a century of change. Imagine a chessboard from the Atlantic to the deserts of Syria. At its center stands Constantinople, Justinian's seat, and his dream of stitching Rome back together. Generals drill by lamplight, jurists polish a body of law, architects raise domes that seem to float. The machine has money, silk roads, and a navy that moves grain and troops quickly. It also has rivals watching. To the east, Sasanian Persians probe the frontiers under Khosrau. There is peace, never guaranteed. To the west, the old western half is a mosaic. Ostrogoths in Italy, Franks in Gaul, Visigoths in Hispania. Across the Channel, post-Roman Britain fragments. Cities tie it together. Ravenna on the marsh, Rome with grand bones, Alexandria and Carthage feeding markets. Monasteries kindle in Ireland and Frankish lands. Ports smell of pitch and fish. Messengers ride, bishops preach, tax collectors count. It's a world of ambition balanced on a single thing, a supply network. Armies march because granaries are full. Courts shine because caravans arrive on time. Keep that network in mind. The sky will dim, the calendar will slip, and every knot will start to strain. Then, far from courts, something tore the ordinary. A volcano hurled itself into the sky. We don't know which mountain. Evidence from ice cores and tree rings points to multiple eruptions around 536 and the early 540s, but the fingerprints are there. Ash and sulfur climbed into the stratosphere and became an invisible veil, aerosols that scatter sunlight and cool the surface. The sun still rose, but with a flat face, as if seen through frosted glass. Chroniclers wrote of dim days. Sailors watched horizons that refused to blaze. Snow fell in summer on mountains meant to be green. This wasn't smoke you could sweep away. The veil hung for months, then years. The seas responded slowly. Monsoons shifted. Storm tracks wandered. Seasons slipped out of tune. By all signs, another major blast followed a few years later, refreshing the chill. Tug at sunlight, and the thread pulls from alpine pastures to antechambers of thrones. The betrayal began in the calendar. Springs came late and brittle. Buds burned with frost. Bees woke confused. Lambing slipped off rhythm. Alpine passes still shone blue with ice in June. Summer felt haunted. At noon, meager light, reluctant heat, snow lines creeping down valleys. In the north, a single frost could erase a season. In the Mediterranean, rains misfired, downpours where a drizzle was needed, dust where vineyards prayed for clouds. Farther east, wind engines faltered. Monsoons tugged at rivers as if changing course. When the sky changes its mind, each field becomes a bet. Autumn, usually the Earth's apology, offered only half forgiveness. Smaller grain heads, thin must, olives yielding a bitter thread. The economy breathed short. Woodcutters, hunters, fisheries, everything thinned. The offness compounded month by month. The first warning wasn't a cry. It was an echo inside a granary. Sacks that should slump heavy stood with shy shoulders. Millstones turned out flour that felt gray and poor between the fingers. Bakers stretched dough with more water. Loaves came smaller. The scent of comfort faded. Prices climbed slow and shameless. In villages, seed grain became family guarded, watched. Parents faced brutal arithmetic. Eat today, or bury kernels and bet on tomorrow. Some gambled, some lost twice. Meat didn't save them. Early culling emptied herds. Weather bullied small boats. Salt preserved hope more than fish. Brewing faltered as barley failed. The little joys thinned one by one. Then hunger grew apace. Mothers trading heirlooms for grain. Lines lengthening. Magistrates trying price caps and failing. Soldiers arriving to keep order and needing rations themselves. Tax collectors met empty barns and hard stares. Some remissions were written, others enforced by absence. No one returned to collect. Mateo lives where the hills give way to the Po Plain, in a village with a stone well and a chapel of wax and damp. He wakes before the weak dawn. Fewer birds sing than before. The air tastes of ash. He runs his palm over the wheat. Heads that should be heavy whisper like paper. He remembers his father's math. Sow with hope, reap with gratitude, store with prudence. The math is broken. He's watered the dough, thinned the loft with straw. His child coughs. His wife stirs the pot to hide the sound. At market, sacks sit behind guards. Mateo offers copper buttons from his wedding coat. The merchant weighs and declines. A monk takes names and hands him half a warm loaf. Mateo thanks him and hates that he's grateful. Rumors tell of softer land to the south, a lord who forgives rents for clearing brush. Other rumors say a sickness in the ports, a boat from the east trailing funerals. Mateo sharpens the scythe, tucks a tiny bag of seed against all advice, and decides, if the harvest fails, he will move. Hunger loosens roots. First a trickle, then a line on the road. Tenant families with carts, shepherds driving thin flocks, soldiers discharged with pay that buys half what it did. At city gates, petitions pile up. Stamps grow scarce. Rumors run faster than people. A lord forgives arrears for clearing forest. Another hires night guards for his granary. Bandits call themselves free companions and collect tolls. Parishes pull tight around strong manors or stout churches. Tax lists go stale before the ink dries. Bishops turn quartermasters. Some open stores. Others bar their gates. Markets write dusk rules. No buying twice. No watered flour. No unsheathed knives. And the alley economy starts at night. The army feels it. Less fodder. Fewer horsemen. Shorter patrols. A watchtower burns and no relief comes. On the Persian frontier, peace by exhaustion. Movement carries culture and fear. A fever in one village arrives with the next cart. A corpse cart in a port becomes a story by supper time in the hills. Still, improvisation keeps the thread. Communal ovens on rotation. Small village charters scratch rights that never needed ink. And it's along this stretched mesh that something slips through. It begins at the waterline. Grain fleets from Egypt and the Levant unload in Constantinople, holds warm and alive. In the shadows of amphorae, fleas ride rats. Inside the fleas, a bacterium waits. No crown, no banner, only the knack for multiplying until a body becomes a signal. Dock workers feel fever and blame the weather. A priest visits 3 houses and sees the same dark swellings at groin and armpit. Buboes, hot and tender. The pattern sharpens, a sudden chill, then heat that cooks the mind. Some cough blood, pneumonic. Others simply fold. Physicians whisper, bleed where they shouldn't. prescribe oils and prayers. A city built to channel grain and law now channels contagion. Bells toll until ropes fray. Graveyards spill into fields. Dogs follow carts. Lamps map grief across the night. The emperor orders measures. Funeral price controls. Teams to carry the dead. Mass pits when ground runs out. He falls ill. The palace holds its breath. Rumor becomes a second pathogen. The disease outruns a horse and respects no wall. Count the absences. Workshops with half-finished amphorae. Apprentices at funerals. Fields needing 10 hands, now with 4. Harvests shrink, not for weather, but for silence. Tax registers turn into memorials. The state remits dues in some districts because there's no one to pay, or to collect. Mints slow, whispers of debasement. Prices jump. Caravans arrive thin. Some routes vanish for seasons, others for generations. Ports improvise quarantines that choke their own lifeblood. Informal insurance fails when too many guarantors die. Credit dries. Trust, the real currency, bloats and bursts. Demography tilts power. Widowers wed early to stitch farms. Dowries wobble. Orphans learn new surnames. Landlords learn that empty acres yield sermons, not rents, and soften terms. Cities court craftsmen with privileges once rare. The army postpones campaigns. Not everywhere, not evenly, but surviving labor names its price. Villages negotiate as communities. Some slaves slip through scarcity's cracks and emerge as tenants. Not all light returns with the sun. Some is made by hand. After the first wave, bells call people to places that still work, monasteries. Behind low walls, brothers and sisters copy texts by stubborn lamplight, recipe by recipe, psalm by psalm. Gardens become apothecaries. Infirmaries keep clean straw and counted pulses. Scriptoria stitch memory back together in ink. Travelers find bread at the gate and instructions. Boil water, air bedding, burn soiled straw. Practical gospel. In towns, crafts rethread. A tanner adopts orphans and teaches the art of turning rot into leather. A smith chases hotter fire because scarce iron must stretch. Potters seal jars against vermin. Looms thrum again. Patterns migrate with refugees. Guilds, thinned by grief, relax entry rules and write knowledge down. In the fields, lords do the math and change their tune. Empty acres pay nothing. Matteo and his neighbors gather under an oak and send a spokesman, lighter dues this year, grazing on fallow, the right to glean without the steward's lash. The Lord hesitates and yields. Recovery doesn't arrive with trumpets. It rumbles first at the mill, then in the furrow, then in the mind. More water wheels along creeks, where wind allows, windmills. Stouter moldboard plows turn heavy soils and bury weeds. Yields inch up. Villages test rotations. 2 fields sown, 1 at rest, then turn. Storage gets smart. Granaries lifted on stone mushrooms against rats. Jars sealed tight. Smokehouses that actually vent. Drainage ditches sketch new lines and a wet meadow becomes hay. In vineyards, grafting saves old vines. On hillsides, new terraces hold the rain. The infrastructure heartbeat returns. Timber bridges rebuilt in stone. Causeways tame mud. A 2-day journey becomes one. In cities, aqueducts are patched, cisterns cleaned. Some baths reopen for hygiene. Workshops cluster by reliable water. Trade rekindles, timid, then familiar. Salt for wool, pottery for grain, glass for spice. Ideas travel with goods. Monastic schools become magnets. Scriptoria become libraries. Libraries debates. Cathedral schools gather momentum and, in time, coalesce into universities. Administration adjusts. Fresh surveys without nostalgia. Taxes that bend to bad years. Ports inspect hulls and warehouses to starve rats. Quarantine becomes civic habit. City charters codify markets and weights. None of this erases scars. It stitches around them. In those stitches grows a new confidence. If darkness comes again, There are ways to bend without breaking. Return to the first frame. A dim sun, quiet streets, families counting loaves and rumors. 536 to 541 are not legend. A convergence of ash in the sky and a microbe in a flea that humbled plans. In some corridors, losses reached large shares of the people, estimates vary, and pressed hardest in the poorest, densest quarters. Yet the story doesn't end in gray. It curves toward adaptation. Monasteries shared knowledge, villages bargained, governments learned to count honestly and to isolate. Crafts codified skills, bridges were rebuilt, plows improved, schools rose. The message for now: nature and microbes ignore slogans. Logistics and science do not. What saved lives wasn't magic. It was organization, clean water, shared grain, the courage to change unfair rules when they failed the common good, the humility to test ideas, the patience to plan for lean years while barns are still full. If the sky dimmed next summer, what habits would you want already in place? Honest records, trust between neighbors, leaders who listen, a culture that prizes both memory and experiment. We began under a veil. We end with candles lit by thousands of hands. If this gave you a new angle on the present, subscribe. Which other hinge year should we cross next?